In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was formless and empty. In Hebrew, these words tohu and bohu do not just mean disorder, but absolute chaos and desolation. But wait. How could a perfect God create something chaotic and desolate? Well, actually, he didn't. Something happened between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2. Something that can change the way you read your Bible forever. Because yes, the earth was created perfect, but something happened between these verses that left it in ruins. Now, what could have happened? Well, the terms tohu and bohu reappear in Isaiah 34:11 and Jeremiah 4:23, describing a divine judgment. These parallels suggest that the chaos of Genesis 1:2 was not part of the original design, but the result of a prior judgment. This raises a fascinating question. What events triggered that judgment and who were the accused? Let's review the two options before I give you my opinion. Number one, the fall of Lucifer. How you have fallen from heaven, O morning star son of the dawn. Before Adam existed, there was a time when Lucifer, one of the most beautiful angels of creation, dwelled in the presence of God. According to Isaiah and Ezekiel, Lucifer was a cherub. In the angelic realm, this is one of the creatures closest to the throne of God, and his main mission was to glorify and serve him. But pride ignited in his heart. I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. Lucifer wanted to be equal to God, and in doing so, he unleashed one of the rebellions, if not the most shocking rebellion in history. This desire for rebellion marked the beginning of an unprecedented conflict. Lucifer, along with a third of the angels, were expelled from heaven. Although the Bible does not precisely detail where they ended up, many scholars believe that he and his followers fell to the earth, a world that God had created perfectly until that moment. It was there, according to these interpretations, that their corruption destabilized things, triggering a divine judgment that plunged the earth into the chaos described in Genesis 1-2, formless and empty. Job 38:4 says the angels sang at the sight of the earth's creation, which implies the angels existed before Genesis 1:1. Therefore, if Lucifer fell before the creation of Adam, it is possible his rebellion and that of his followers caused the chaotic state described in passage 1:2. In his new identity as Satan, Lucifer was not just a spectator of the chaos, but a protagonist. His rebellion involved challenging God's authority in the heavens, but also establishing a kingdom of darkness over the planet. This kingdom supposedly was not limited to the spiritual realm, but extended to the physical order, affecting everything around it. This raises crucial questions. Was Earth a perfect kingdom that crumbled with Lucifer's fall? Was this the setting where the cosmic spiritual battle that impacted the entire universe began? Well, it's interesting to note that Lucifer's rebellion also had implications for understanding evil in the world. Because the idea that a perfectly created being could fall suggests that evil is not something we are born with, but a corruption of that original good. The account also introduces us to the idea of a war in the heavens that had very tangible consequences on earth. Revelation 12 describes a celestial conflict in which Michael and his angels fought against the dragon Satan and his hosts. This description could be seen as a reference to this first rebellion. The repercussions affected the spiritual state of the universe, but also the physical order of creation, leaving the earth in a state of darkness and chaos. But although the fall of Lucifer is an event that was widely accepted within Christian theology, the direct connection between his rebellion and the chaotic state that the Bible describes in Genesis 1:2 is a subject of debate. Because although there are passages that speak of pride and his rebellion, none directly link it to the disorder and void, tohu and bohu, mentioned in Genesis. Another point of controversy also lies in the location of Lucifer's banishment, because some believe that his fall brought him to earth, while others suggest that his initial condemnation may have occurred in a purely spiritual realm. The Bible does not clearly specify the place of his banishment, which leaves us room to interpret in various ways. But this is something crucial, because if Lucifer and his angels were not sent to earth, then the chaotic state of Genesis 1-2 has to do with something else. Which brings us to the second possible answer. And before giving you my opinion, I'm going to tell you about it. 2. A pre-Adamic race. Psalm 104 describes an event where the waters covered the earth and were withdrawn by God's command. This passage, along with 2 Peter 3:6, suggests that there might have been a universal flood before Noah's, which could be a reference to a pre-Adamic judgment. Wait, what does pre-Adamic mean? It means prior to. And yes, this theory suggests what if Earth was not particularly the place of Lucifer's burial, but the home of a civilization prior to Adam, that is, before humans. This is commonly known as the gap theory, and it suggests that intelligent beings inhabited our planet long before we were created. This civilization, possibly later ruled by Lucifer, would have been destroyed by a divine judgment due to its corruption. Let's see, the idea of a pre-Adamic race seeks to explain. First, the antiquity of the earth, reconciling the biblical history with the presence of fossils and other evidence that scientifically indicate there were forms of life before humans millions of years ago. According to the gap theory, this previous civilization was completely destroyed, leaving the earth covered in water and darkness, a state that symbolizes judgment and total desolation. However, this line of thought faces challenges, significant theological objections. Firstly, there is no biblical evidence supporting the existence of beings prior to Adam, at least not intelligent physical beings. The texts we cite, such as those from Jeremiah or Peter, can be interpreted in many ways, and they are. There are theologians who say that Jeremiah refers, for example, to a judgment on Israel, others to a more apocalyptic future judgment, and they do not agree. Likewise, Genesis 1:1-2 could also be understood as something different, simply as the beginning of a creative process where the initial chaos, the lack of form, is part of the divine design without the need for a prior judgment. That's simply how God began to do things. And yes, the truth is that God is sovereign and could have easily created intelligent beings before us, beings that rebelled against Him. And He doesn't have to tell us, He doesn't have to say it, because the Bible is a revelation for the human race about how to connect with God. It is not for animals, it is not for angels, it is for us. But regardless of what we think about this topic, there is something very interesting, which is that the idea
هل تحتاج قوة أكبر؟ إذن فأنت بحاجة إلى
links directly to the redemptive character of God. And that's what I want to focus on. If you ask me, David, what is your opinion on this matter? I would tell you, look, we cannot assert with certainty that Lucifer's judgment was what organized and created the chaos, or that there was a pre-Adamic race. But we can interpret that God transforms chaos into something renewed and full of life. We can interpret that in some way. Genesis 1-2 summarizes how God works, where the disorder of our life changes when He says, "Let there be light." As I just told you, the truth is that there is no need to include a judgment to explain tohu, and the disorder and chaos. However, the use of those passages in other contexts does make us think that a judgment might be. Why exactly are those words? Therefore, for many, the possibility that something catastrophic occurred before the creation of Adam is very strong. But well, let's talk a little more with my opinion. I promised you that I would give it to you, and that is exactly what I am going to do. My opinion regarding this mystery about what happened before Adam, what happened before Genesis, is that we don't know if it's right for it to be that way. We don't have to have all the answers. It pleased God not to reveal this mystery. And although I love to develop theories and investigate and present them to you, I believe that the most important thing is to remember that the Bible is not there to answer our questions about the past, nor to unveil all mysteries, but to guide us towards having a relationship with God. As Jesus said, "I am the light of the world, and whoever follows me will not walk in darkness." The true teaching of the Bible is not in piecing together the puzzle of history, but in finding redemption and purpose in it. We may never know all the details of what happened before Genesis, but what we do know is that one of God's great abilities has always been to restore and redeem. Genesis 1-2 not only speaks of a disordered world, but it tells us of a God who moves amidst disorder and chaos to bring order, light, and life. If there was a pre-Adamic world, if it was the fall of Lucifer, it does not change that fundamental truth. God is just sovereign and merciful. Therefore, instead of focusing on what we do not understand or what is not revealed, let's focus on what God has clearly and His eternal grace. But if you ask me, I believe the fall of Lucifer occurred. Goodbye.